They've never had to deal with it, and we've heard that they all had about a month of training in being police negotiators, despite having very long careers in the force. They'd had various refresher courses, but they'd never dealt with this many hostages. They'd never really been in a situation so big before.
Jamelle Wells, thank you so much. The Prime Minister has defended the performance of his deputy Julie Bishop after she struggled to explain a key part of the government's superannuation policy. In an interview on 3AW in Melbourne, Julie Bishop was quizzed repeatedly about the Coalition's proposed superannuation changes. Our political reporter Julie Doyle explains more from Parliament House in Canberra.
That interview you referred to there with Neil Mitchell on 3AW a bit earlier today. Now, Julie Bishop was asked a lot of questions about a scheme that's called the Transition to Retirement Scheme, and she was asked to explain it and what she knew about it. Now, this scheme, in effect, basically it means that people who are of retirement age can draw on their super while they're still working. Now, the government announced some changes to the scheme back in the budget, and from July next year, those earnings will be taxed at 15%. So that's it in a nutshell, and Julie Bishop had a bit of trouble explaining that when she was asked about it. Now, the Prime Minister then afterwards was asked about her performance, and he defended her and said that superannuation is a very complex area. Now, he then did go into an explanation of what this scheme is and changes will apply, and the government argues that the changes that have been announced will only apply to a small number of people. So let's hear now from Julie Bishop during that interview and from the Prime Minister as well.
Are you aware of the Transition to Retirement Scheme?
Well, I'm certainly aware that we have one, yeah.
How does it work?
Well, Neil, this is obviously a gotcha moment. You want me to go through...
No, I think
it's not my portfolio. And
this is the hole in your whole logic. You're saying it's only 4% of taxpayers. You, Josh Frydenberg, neither of you understand transition to retirement. That's clear. And this is where you're hitting average people, not the fat cats, the average people.
Well, I don't accept that that's the case, because I've had a briefing on this, and I'm told that 96% of people are either better off or are not affected by it.
I should suggest you have a closer look at the briefing, because that is clearly wrong, Minister.
I'm happy to explain the transition to retirement changes if you like, but I think you'll find superannuation is notoriously an area of great complexity.
OK, Julie, putting that stumble aside, the Prime Minister focused today on funding for cancer research.
That's right, Kumi. He visited the Sydney Children's Hospital a bit earlier today, and he was there to talk about an initiative called the Zero Childhood Cancer Initiative, and he was committing $20 million in funding into research for better ways to provide treatment for children who have cancer. Now, while he was there, he met some families and children that have been affected by cancer, including one girl called Lulu. He sat down in a bit of a change of pace for the campaign and did some drawings with her and exchanged those drawings. He took some away with him. He said he was going to put some of those drawings in his office back here at Parliament House. So it was quite an emotional visit for the Prime Minister, and afterwards he described it as a pretty raw place emotionally. And as I mentioned, he was talking about wanting to provide this extra money for research into these childhood cancers. So let's hear from the Prime Minister now speaking at that event.
This is every parent's nightmare, is to have a sick child, and to be confronted with some of these childhood cancers, which are very challenging from a clinical point of view. Some of them have very low survival rates, we know that, and this is heartbreaking stuff. So, yeah, there is no greater work being done in medicine than what's being done here. I mean, what could be more important than aiming to have zero childhood cancers?
And Julie, the opposition leader started the day in Cairns talking about tourism.
He did. Bill Shorten had this focus again, Kumi, talking about wanting to divert some funding from the Northern Australia Fund so that it goes to tourism projects. Now, after that, he then flew down to Brisbane, where he's done another street walk through a shopping centre in Brisbane in the electorate of Bonner. He was there with the local candidate and with his wife, Chloe, as well. But early in the day, there were lots of questions to Bill Shorten again about company tax and about a small business policy. The government wants to change the definition of a small business from a threshold of $2 million turnover by increasing it up to $10 million. Now, Labor doesn't support that change, and Bill Shorten also confirmed today that Labor will keep in place this deficit levy on high income earners. Now, he said today in his media conference that he's prepared to make that decision because that money needs to go to fund other areas and to go to promises he's made in other areas. So let's hear from Bill Shorten now.
In a time when they have got no plan to help do anything to reduce net public sector debt, what I want to do is I have to make hard choices. I choose to prioritise bulk billing. I choose to prioritise the ability of people to get x-rays and mammograms and CT scans without having to pay large upfront fees. I choose to make sure that every child in a school in Cairns or Western Sydney gets comparable resources to a child in the eastern suburbs of Sydney.
That's the opposition leader Bill Shorten there, Kumi, speaking a bit earlier today from Cairns. Now, tomorrow we have the national accounts figures coming out, so that will be one to watch, and I'm sure that will become a lot of the main focus of tomorrow's campaigning.
The top story is the Australian Fair Work Commission has chosen to raise the minimum wage by 2.4%, taking the wage of Australia's lowest paid workers to $672 a week. The man charged over the